Justice in plain sight, admitting that his decision to strip former CIA Director John Brennan of his security clearances was retribution for his role in the Russia investigation. The president saying, quote, "I call it the rigged witch hunt. It is a sham, and these people led it. So I think it's something that had to be done." The admission came in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, in which Donald Trump seemingly acknowledged punishing the people who led the Russia investigation. Of course, John Brennan did not ever lead the Russia investigation, but he was on to Trump and his campaign's ties to Russia.
There was intelligence that the Russian intelligence services were actively involved in this effort, and having been involved in many counterintelligence cases in the past, I know what the Russians try to do. They try to suborn individuals, and they try to get individuals, including U.S. persons, to act on their behalf either wittingly or unwittingly. And I was worried by a number of the contacts that the Russians had with U.S. persons, and so therefore, by the time I left office on January 20th, I had unresolved questions in my mind as to whether or not the Russians had been successful in getting U.S. persons involved in the campaign or not to work on their behalf, again, either in a witting or unwitting fashion.
Now, we know that the president is, at a minimum, a subject in the obstruction of justice investigation. He claimed in last night's Wall Street Journal interview that, quote, "Of course, they say it's not an investigation. You know, in theory, I'm not under investigation. I'm not a target. But regardless, I think that whole, I call it the rigged witch hunt, is a sham." But what if Donald Trump is a target who can't be indicted because Robert Mueller is believed to be operating under the DOJ policy that a president can't be indicted while in office? So the target in this case is never officially notified that he's a target, but he's a target all the same. It might offer the most plausible explanation yet for the president's lawyer's reluctance to agree to an interview. Targets almost never do. We know that Special Counsel Mueller is interviewing current and former White House aides to determine whether Donald Trump obstructed the investigation into Russian meddling through his efforts to get Jeff Sessions to unrecuse himself, and by firing Jim Comey, and by seeking to fire Robert Mueller. We also know that the Special Counsel is examining Donald Trump's tweets and public statements. So why? Why would Donald Trump continue to walk up to the line and, in the view of many experts, cross the line into clear obstruction of justice by admitting he's firing people investigating Russian interference? Here to help us answer that question, the very best of the best, Chuck Rosenberg, former U.S. attorney and former senior FBI official; Zerlina Maxwell, former Clinton campaign advisor, now director of progressive programming for SiriusXM; Jonathan Swan, national political reporter for Axios. Also back with us, Frank Figliuzzi, former FBI assistant director for counterintelligence; and Steve Schmidt is back. Steve, you're going to end up with one name by the end of this. Let me start with you, Chuck. Take me through this. What I understand now may not be a distinction worth making, that the president is somehow comforted by the fact that he's been told he's not a target. He may never officially cross the transom of becoming one.
Yeah, so I think you explained it really well. It gets a little bit weedy, Nicole, but here it goes. Subject is somebody within the scope of an investigation. We don't know if we're going to charge that person or not, but we're looking at her. A target is a likely defendant. But as you said, if you can't charge a sitting president, could he actually be a target? And the answer is maybe. Maybe he'll be a target when he's no longer the president, because one day he'll no longer be the president. So that's where this gets sticky. My view is that he's absolutely a subject, and were he not the president of the United States, he would be a target. He would be a likely defendant.
So what is the explanation for his conduct? If he is, at best, for his legal liabilities, a subject, and if he weren't the president, more likely a target, why act like this? Why continue to prosecute and punish and sort of try to stop an investigation into yourself? Why
act like this? That's a tough one. Some people just don't have any impulse control. That may be the case here. You know, here's the other weird argument that comes up all the time. Stripping Brennan of his security clearance or firing Comey. On one hand, if benign, is within his authority as the president of the United States. On the other hand, and as a prosecutor, I think this hand sort of controls, looks like obstruction of justice. If not an actual crime, then certainly evidence of a crime. It's hard to know why people keep crossing that line. Some people just can't help themselves.
And if proving obstruction is about understanding his intent, we have it in his own words. His intent was to stop the people leading the Russia investigation. These people led it, so I think it's something that had to be done. That is the intent, to stop an investigation into himself and his campaign.
It sounds eerily like what he told Lester Holt. I fired Jim Comey because of the Russia thing. I did this to John Brennan because he was part of the Russia investigation, right? These are all bricks in a wall. This wall is getting a lot higher.
A lot higher and a lot thicker. Frank Figliuzzi, you had a concise tweet. You think this is intent to obstruct. Explain.
I do, because obstruction, as you all know and your viewers know, is all about showing intent, mindset, what was your purpose in conducting yourself this way. And so he's giving us essentially obstruction 101. And some may say, look, when you strip the clearance of a former CIA director, you're not obstructing anything related to the collusion investigation. But in reality, the chilling effect that it has on active, on-board investigators and intelligence officials is quite clear. If you cross me, if you continue in this vein, you lose your clearance. And in fact, there are very recent reports that Bruce Orr, an active DOJ official, is being talked about in terms of stripping his clearance. This is the next step, and it's rapid, of moving from former officials you don't like to current officials you don't like.
Steve Schmidt, I spoke to two former senior intelligence officials from the Bush era, and I asked, you know, when the Iraq War went really south, was there anyone that was looked at or examined to possibly strip their clearances so they wouldn't have access to the things that were going on there? Was there anyone that was so harsh a critic, anyone considered taking away their clearances? And I was given a resounding no way. I want you to speak to the practice of stripping clearances as a punishment, in Donald Trump's own words. And I also want to just put something up for our viewers. These are all of the people that Trump has now fired or threatened or punished who were involved in the Russia investigation. James Comey, Andrew McCabe, former deputy director of the FBI and acting director of the FBI, Pete Strzok,